work. When people received their Xanos, they found out that while the obstacle detection function was on, all it would do is just fly up in the air a few feet and then land again, over and over. Yeah, you know, the sky was not the obstacle we were trying to avoid. And in the odd times where it didn't just flop around pathetically, it would suddenly go out of control, flying off in random directions until it was either out of range, lost in a tree, or embedded in someone's face. So Xano didn't even manage to achieve the base function of a drone. And then, because the Kickstarter was so successful that they ended up with 20 times the number of orders they were targeting to fulfill, it also means the company smashed all of their stretch goals. If you've ever used Kickstarter, you'll have seen that sometimes companies will promise extra features if they hit a certain number of orders. So yes, they had to fulfill all of those too, which they were clearly not ready for. The company was so strained that they ended up burning through their entire pot of cash to the point where they actually went bankrupt before they could even attempt to integrate many of the features shown in the original trailer, like gesture control and the drone being able to land back in your hand. Wow, that actually worked. Is that the least awkward thing all video? It's actually a bit of a shame that they never got to finish it, because I would have loved to see the end result of someone holding out their hand and a clearly confused drone accidentally landing on their head. But this project got just way out of hand, because in order to try and save themselves from bankruptcy, the company then started selling the drone to new buyers before it had even shipped it to the existing backers. This project was so poorly handled that it even had a profound effect on Kickstarter themselves, with people dropping out left, right, and center and losing faith in the platform themselves. It got to the point where Kickstarter had to send a letter to backers announcing that Xano's creators were banned from creating any further projects. And they even went as far as to commission the freelance journalist Mark Harris to do a full-scale investigation, basically a post-mortem, to make it clear to the public that the reason Xano didn't work was because of them and not Kickstarter. Although, let's be honest, Kickstarter didn't have nothing to do with it. Number 2 then has got to be Fisker, an American automotive company who released a car called the Ocean. This one also involves our buddy Marquez, MKBHD. So Marquez initially asked Fisker to give him that car so he could review it, but the company kept delaying, so he just borrowed it from a dealer. When Fisker found out that Marquez had found a way to get hold of the car, they asked him to wait to review it until a software update came out. He said no, and reviewed it anyway. His words were,
"It's not really in my policy to wait on promised future software updates. I'm gonna review the car that's out now, that real buyers are actually living with."
And I think this is the important point. If this was a pre-release product and it was running beta software, then maybe what the company was asking was fair. But no, this car was on sale and in buyers' hands. So no takesy backsies. So anyway, Marquez's review was pretty resoundingly negative. The worst car I've ever reviewed is actually the title, talking about a lot of weird choices, including unlabeled buttons and sunroof solar panels you can't monitor and software glitches with the key fob, the cameras, and more. It does not look like a good product. I think that's pretty clear. But then Fisker, who's already in a bad spot here, made it a lot worse with their response. They basically called up the dealer who lent the car to Marquez and asked him for Marquez's personal details so they could get in touch directly with him. It was a clear sign of a company not confident in their product, but in fact scrambling to hide a mess, which is not only morally wrong, but I mean, that would be a crime in some countries. Fisker was already on the down before this whole fiasco, but obviously it blowing up across the internet, it's not going to decelerate the process, and it made it very much an external embarrassment as well as an internal one, to the point where in this moment Fisker said that they may not even have enough money to survive the year, and they've had to turn to extreme markdowns to stave off bankruptcy. They've basically been forced to slash the price of the Ocean, their only model, by nearly 40%. Oh yeah, and they're also on track for being delisted from the New York Stock Exchange for failure to keep their share price above $1. 8 out of 10 fail. But now it's getting majorly awkward with Yahoo. It sounds ridiculous today, but before Google became the absolute behemoth that it is now, Yahoo was the biggest search engine in the world. But here's what makes this so cringeworthy. Yahoo actually had the chance to buy Google twice. The first time was in 1998, where the two Google founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, makes this so cringeworthy. Yahoo actually had the chance to buy Google twice. The first time was in 1998, where the two Google founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, they wanted to sell their startup so that they could get back to focusing on college, which they priced at $1 million. And the tech that made them confident enough to price it that high was something called the PageRank system. It's basically the function that shows you the page that most closely matches what you're looking for. Essentially what became the core function of Google search. Yahoo decided to not buy the company. They said it was overpriced. Okay, but then fast forward to 2002, where Google had already way overtaken Yahoo to be the reigning search engine for a couple of years. It was looking so bad for Yahoo that they decided to cut their losses and just go after Google again. They swallowed their pride and they offered them $3 billion. For a couple of years. It was looking so bad for Yahoo that they decided to cut their losses and just go after Google again. They swallowed their pride and they offered them $3 billion. Google said, give us $5 billion. And Yahoo thought, no, $5 billion? That's absolutely crazy. And they walked away for the second time. But, oh my goodness. You know what Google is worth today? $2.1 trillion. Yahoo could have made a 400 times profit if they'd sealed the deal in 2002. And if they'd done it in 1998, well, 2 million times. But as it stands, because they didn't, they ended up being crushed by Google, with most of their core business being acquired by Verizon in 2017 for just a fraction of what it used to be worth. 9 out of 10. To achieve what they were promising. Because even despite spending over $100 million, they did not manage to ship a single unit before they, well, welcome to the 14 most hilariously awkward tech fails of all time. These are honestly so hard to watch that you'll want to bury your head in the ground to save yourself from the cringe. So, the Air umbrella was a pretty exciting prospect when it first surfaced in 2014. It's less bulky than a normal peasant umbrella. It doesn't use fabric that needs to dry
fly off. It doesn't have a frame that's going to get caught on things and invert itself anytime there's anything more than just a little light breeze. And hell, you'd look like the coolest kid on the block, repelling rain with your wind force field. So am I surprised that this ended up raising over $100,000 when it landed on Kickstarter? Not really. But am I actually shocked that this even ended up on Kickstarter? Yes, because well, here's the problem. If you actually want to repel rain with air, you've got to eject that air faster than the rain is falling at you. So 25 miles per hour, as discovered by the Action Lab channel. Or in other words, this would basically need to be as powerful as a professional leaf blower. You know those ones that are so loud you can hear them from 2 streets away? Yeah, that. Just right next to your head. Not to even mention the size of the battery and therefore the weight required to keep this thing running for anything more than 10 minutes. And then, even if you solve those problems, if you're literally blowing the air away from you, what happens to the person standing next to you? So yeah, the product was dead before it was even made. And because the trailer was happens to the person standing next to you. So yeah, the product was dead before it was even made, and because the trailer was almost definitely faked too, by cutting off the image so you couldn't actually see the industrial-sized pump that I can only assume was attached to actually allow it to work, the creators were forced to cancel the project. But since they'd already spent all the backers' money on it, they had nothing left to refund them with. 2 out of 10. 2 out of 10 just because things do get much, much worse.
Somehow. Like Laundroid, a robot straight from the future that would be able to wash, to dry. This thing could use AI-powered visual processing to identify clothes, iron those clothes, sort them, and then even fold them to be stored in a dedicated closet. And this thing was even demoed live at the CES Tech Show, where it did manage to fold a t-shirt in front of thousands of attendees, leading to this campaign being on a whole other scale to the Air Umbrella. I mean, this company raised $89 million in funding, and then borrowed 20 more for some reason. Well, this is awkward, because it's only upon receiving all of these funds that Laundroid realized a slight flaw in their plan. They were trying to create something requiring the technology of 2050, but actually using the technology of 2015. Sure, they were able to get it working under their own very specifically controlled demos, but as soon as you took it outside of that, yeah. I mean, like, one Verge reporter found that Laundroid couldn't even handle folding his t-shirt in 2018 because the black color confused the image processing. I mean, what would it do if I handed it this? But also, the vast engineering required to get robotic arms to be able to do what's actually quite a simple task for humans means that this robot was priced at $16,500. Who could afford that? Well, only people who could also just hire a maid, who could do the job far better and far faster. Because, yes, Laundroid took between 5 and 10 minutes to fold the most simple t-shirt. Peak example of over-engineering to iron out a non-issue by vaguely saying the word AI a few times in the earshot of some investors. The company went bankrupt about 4 years after they first debuted, presumably because they realized how impossible it was to achieve what they were promising. Because even despite spending over $100 million, they did not manage to ship a single unit before they, well, folded. 3 out of 10. But I've got to say, one of the best places